Hello and welcome to week 2. Here we have the learning resources for the week. You will see that many of the readings for this week are very relevant to current issues surrounding racial disparities and injustice. There are 4 required articles this week. You will see the first article is surrounding the Latinx community. Specifically, it overviews the impact of the 2017 zero tolerance policy by the Trump administration, which separated many children from their parents. I'm sure many of you are aware of this policy and the impact that it's brought. Within this article, it will also discuss the importance of the parent-child relationship for emotional well-being and development. You'll see within the article that it's very common for Latinx youth to experience long periods of separation from their parents. Many times this is due to immigration, and they're also likely to experience adverse childhood experiences. So these could be, things such as, mostly traumatic experiences. Then for the next article, it discusses issues surrounding African American families. You'll see within this article that there are a variety of barriers to treatment for African American families. Some of them are access related and some of them are more cultural based. This study was focused on families who have overcome those barriers and some specific factors which have helped them overcome the barriers. I hope that you find it interesting. So in the next article, this one is very informative and important to the future of social work practice. As social workers, we should always be aware of and willing to learn about issues surrounding race and culture and how it might impact treatment. This article will describe critical race theory, which is a way for us to recognize and address racial disparities head on. Please make sure you read through the article thoroughly because I think this is a really important and relevant theory as we move forward and in social work practice. For the final required reading, you'll be reading about race, culture, and gender issues as it relates specifically to family therapy. There's a couple of things that are important to note within the article, but please read through it thoroughly. Moving on to the optional readings, you will only need to choose one of these readings, and just what I always suggest is, you can read something that might interest you, but it may be even more helpful to read something that you think that you might need to learn more about. So then we have some useful websites here as well that can help you with some specific ways to address race and culture issues within your practice. And then we have our media section. Please watch this documentary. It is a really interesting documentary which focuses on the lives of the homeless in New York City. It describes some specific experiences within the day-to-day lives of individuals and families within the shantytown community. One of your discussions for the week will be based on this, so please watch the whole thing. It's about an hour. And then lastly, you will have a podcast to listen to. It's not on my screen here, but the link is posted in Learning Resources just below the video. For your first discussion this week, you will be describing the concept of cultural competency. We do have the cultural competence resource here. But I'm sure this is not a new concept to you, but I hope that the readings for this week have even furthered your understanding of the concept and the importance of cultural competency within practice. So you will just be kind of describing what your interpretation is and what your definition of the concept might be. And then following your description, I would like you to describe a client interaction in which you were culturally competent and use strategies that are based on what your definition is. If you can't think of any client interactions, you can also discuss an example from within your personal life, just as long as it's an example of cultural competency. You will then be required to respond to at least one classmate. Moving on, as stated, Previously, there is a discussion focused specifically on the Inside Life Outside documentary. First, within your initial post, you will discuss your observations of the impact of race, class, and gender on the family's dynamics, as well as their ability to access their needed services. For instance, you might discuss some oppression that you've observed, as well as maybe some cultural norms that you have noticed that impact the family dynamics. You'll then need to respond to at least 2 of these 6 questions. I'm not going to describe all of the questions as they are pretty straightforward, but I will expect some critical thinking for these questions, so be sure to be thorough. In terms of question 5, something that I notice in this class as well as other classes is that these kind of questions students tend to shy away from. But I know for myself, I look at issues surrounding countertransference as extremely important to recognize. Remember that our awareness of countertransference and reactions to culture or race or gender or class issues, awareness of that will really help us to avoid it having negative impact on our clients. And it'll also help us grow as social workers and build our understanding. Remember that we should always be willing to learn and always be aware of these issues. So I would recommend trying to tackle that question. I mean, of course, you can try any of the 2 questions, but that's one in particular that I find to be very important. Then for this post, you are not required to post a response, though you can if you want to. I would suggest trying to at least read 1 or 2 of your classmates' posts just to see some different perspectives. Then you also have the reading reflection paper due on Sunday of week 2, but I am going to post a video specific to that assignment. As usual, initial posts are due by Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and response posts are due by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please make sure to reach out if you have any questions, and I hope you all have a great week.